This is Howland Dragstrip as it looks today. And this is Howland Dragstrip as it was. And this is Howland Dragstrip on opening day in 1957. No, that's not exhaust smoke, that is dirt dust. When Howland opened, it opened up as a dirt drag strip. The founder, a gentleman by the name of Ben Christ, did not have enough money to blacktop the strip. He only had a concrete starting line. So opening day was dirt. Hard to believe people would take their street cars out and run down this dirt path. On opening day, they had a rollover, and Ben Christ, upon seeing this, said he had to do something, so he went out and floated another loan and had the strip paved the very next week. Howland Dragstrip is located near Warren, Ohio, at the intersection of Route 46 and North River Road on property referred to as the King Farm. As you can witness in the background, the barn. There's a Thunderbird. There's a 56 Ford convertible. These shots were taken from the spectator side. And across the way you can see the pit area. Big 56 Buick in the other side. There's a 32 Ford Coupe. There's another view of the coupe. Now this is possibly the very next week of operation. They have paved the track. There's a chop and channel coupe with an Oldsmobile engine with 6 2s on it. This is up in the starting line area. In the background you can see the concrete starting line. Concrete starting pad was 100 feet long, and then it dropped to the blacktop. There's about an inch to an inch and a half drop between the two, and if you'll watch, you'll see the cars bounce as they hit the blacktop. There's some coupes shuffling around up on the starting line. Check this fella out. He keeps his arm on the windowsill all the way down. Nothing to it. Howland Dragstrip was 16 feet wide by a quarter of a mile long, extremely narrow. There's our same fellow in this chopped and channeled coupe coming up. That's on the return road, which always remained dirt through all its years of operation. Notice what they use for markers here are just chopped up tree stumps. Now here's another little purple Model A coupe. This one was owned by two gentlemen out of Warren, Ohio, Roger Garber and Leroy Luscombe. Little Chevy powered. A little quick view of going up the return road. Here's another coupe with a big Hemi in it. Seems like most of the cars back then always had a push start. We'll kind of watch this car through the years. Eventually they narrow the rear end under it, and then they sell it to another gentleman. He paints it gold, and we'll see it running injection later on. This is up behind the starting line now. On the other side of the corrugated fence is Route 46. There's our little coupe going now. That's 16 feet wide. Here's the two fellows now. Looks like they were running 6.2s on it at this point. Now in this little segment we'll see quite a bit of this little 32 Ford Roadster. This was owned and driven by Cal Stambaugh out of Niles. There's a view of our trophy stand at the beginning. An injected Corvette. If you like 57 Chevys, we'll give you a whole bunch of them here real quick. And here's that trophy stand again, just cardboard boxes with trophies on. Here we are up behind the starting line. We're panning down through at the crowd. Howland would normally draw roughly 1,500 spectators every Sunday and upwards of 300 to 400 competitors. General admission was 50 cents to get in and 50 cents for the car. If you wanted to go into the pits, there was another 50 cents and I believe another $1 to race your car. And right there is the early announcing tower. We'll have another view of that later on. It was nothing but a farm wagon that they would run in and out of the barn every week and throw a canvas tarp over. Remember, this is all 1957, so little chopped and channeled primered coupes were in their heyday at that time. These were your early hot rods. Wide white walls and mostly flathead powered. In a conversation with Cal, he told me that his roadster ran a consistent 104 mile an hour, so every Sunday he would make a pass and then they would calibrate their clocks to his speed. And they did drag race motorcycles back at that time. There's another T-bird. Little gray primered 33-34 Ford Coupe there was a fellow out of the Niles area. Still has that car in about the same condition in storage. Little red coupe on the far side was flathead powered. There's a couple birds. The 32 Ford on this side is almost a black cherry in color. It was powered by a Buick Nailhead, and that gentleman was out of the Youngstown area. He also served as the flagger. Here's some folks having a good time. That's what drag racing was in the early days, good times. Cal still owns this roadster today, but it's been in storage. About the only major change on it, it's painted a silver blue color. There's Cal holding his trophy. I think that name says it all for that. Back in the early years, there was no guardrails down along the strips as there are today. When Howland began, they didn't even have timing lights at the far end. A fellow sat down there with a walkie-talkie and he would watch which car came across the line first, then he would radio up to the announcing wagon and tell them which car won. Eventually they put timing lights in. There's Cal again, must have won, and he drew a nice crowd of friends around. Watch this fella. Doesn't keep it very straight, does he? Howland also went downhill, and to keep cars from rolling, they would put a rubber hose under the front tire. There's a very early view of Cal's roadster when it was flathead powered. 39 or 40 Ford there had a Carson top on. There's that Ford I just talked about. Considering the narrowness of the track, there was very few instances of any mishaps. Besides the rollover on opening day, which was a 57 Chevy, a fellow rolled a primered coupe at the far end, and later on there was a 49 or 50 Oldsmobile that rolled over. But being the starting line was concrete, I assume that prevented them from fishtailing off the line, and they never made contact with each other. Now, eventually they built a little announcing tower out of plywood and 2x4s, and someone has gone up on the top and taken some pictures down, and you'll be able to see the narrowness of the track more so. What we're seeing here is a lot of cars that were running gasser classes then. Probably most of the Chevys had 3.2s on or a solid lifter cam. There's our flagman in operation. Gives it all. Notice the time delay on some of these cars to travel that 100 feet. Of course, these are big old stalkers. There's a big Hudson. Here's another view of the announcing wagon. I think at the end of the day our starter had to be pretty tired. That Chevy convertible there is fuel injection. There's our gentleman standing right between the cars. As I said earlier, they don't seem to fishtail, else they wouldn't be standing there very long. Customized 55 Chevy in the far lane. We'll start seeing this dark green 55 Chevy quite often. This was driven by Wilbur Tackett out of Niles. 53 Chevy was running a V8. Here's Wilbur Tackett in the near lane. roadsters. Warren, Ohio is located near Youngstown, Ohio, up in northeastern Ohio. Many of the competitors came from the Cleveland area, also out of western Pennsylvania. Now we've moved up to 1958. There's that same 32 Ford we had talked about earlier. Light gray Oldsmobile here is powered by an Oldsmobile. It was driven by Dave Dangerfield out of Youngstown. Must have been a trick there with the trunk lid opening. Probably got more downforce. That car we just caught a quick glimpse of, the red and silver car in the far lane, was referred to as the Steel Eel out of Cleveland. It was driven by Dave Bookbinder. Here's a home-built dragster. Going back to Dave Bookbinder again, that car ran C. Aldered. At one time around 1960, he held the NHRA class record for that class. More gassers. Jump start. And then something happened with the 57 in the far lane. Notice everybody just sitting here in the foreground. I remember spending many Sunday afternoons sitting in that same area or even closer to the starting line. Safety was never an issue back at that time. Most of these little coupes are always running some type of competition class. Howland not only had the concrete starting line, but it also had a concrete shutdown area, as you can always pick up in some of these shots down through there. You'll see it's a lot wider. But the shutoff area was very short. And generally if a car got up past 120 mile an hour, so they wound up in a cornfield at the far end. Here's our little purple coupe from earlier. You notice he's narrowed the rear end now. Here's another home-built dragster. This one's running a Chrysler Hemi. There's a couple Corvettes. The one on this side's a 58. The other one's a 56 or a 57. Couple early Mopars. Here's Dave Dangerfield again. He'll eventually move into dragsters, and later in this video we'll see him in one. Here's how you got your car to the track in the old days. Flat-towed it. And these fellows are trying to get the tow bar to drop on the hitch. Creation in the far lane looks like a Crosley body over something. This roadster here with the dragon painted on the side is driven by George Eisenhart, who went on to establish Thompson Dragstrip in northeastern Ohio. And here's the steel eel of Dave Bookbinder. We made reference about it earlier. Here's Garber and Luscombe again. Another look at George Eisenhart. Not much in the way of physical improvements to Howland Dragstrip in all its years of operation. Here's a little view down at the far end where the cars were shutting off. There's a steel eel again. Like a big old Model A sedan. '56 with some flames on it. About the only physical improvements ever made out there was some railroad ties placed in the ground along the spectator side. Stuck a couple telephone poles up on each side of the starting line and hung some pennants. Like I said before, the return roads, the pit staging area, those remain dirt throughout its operation. There's a little view of the cars heading to the strip up out of Youngstown area. The pickup here seems to move out pretty good. That car right there is Arlen Vanke out of Akron. Here's some views from up on top of the announcing tower, and you can see how narrow the track is from this angle. We've now moved over to the spectator side, and we're down near the finish line. Chevy gasser, little rail. Another gasser. You can see at this point they're starting to radius the rear fenders out for bigger slicks. Little home-built dragster here. It's a view of it, a Chrysler Hemi with Model A frame rails. Now we're starting to see more and more of the 60 Chevys and Pontiacs, which at this point in time were called A stockers, the forerunners of our future super stocks. These are your 348s with the 3.2s on 335 horse. Most of them had 4 speeds. Anytime a dragster would make a pass, the trusty ambulance would follow him down. Watch the dragster pass this motorcycle. What we're seeing here is probably eliminator runs for top eliminator on the day. Howland would take all the class winners and then they would race each other straight up. There was no handicapping in those days. So your top eliminator at this time would either be a motorcycle or a dragster. That dragster was actually owned by 2 fellows. They were partners, Gene Friend and Bill Moore. Little Hudson jet. Hudson jet again beating a big Mercury by the looks of it. Mercury on this near lane throwing some shifts. This is 1960 now, and we're looking at Art Malone's blown and injected Chrysler powered dragster, fuel burner. Came to Howland to make exhibition runs on this particular day. Here he's been pushed down the strip and back up. And the Howland's always falling them down. He was using a parachute in these scenes. Check out his tow vehicle there, the Rambler. Here he is on a smoky run. Now that we're seeing more and more of this dark green Chevy, this is that Wilbur Tackett out of Niles. By 1960, he was the NHRA class record holder at various times through 1960. Also in 1960 at the Detroit Nationals, he won his class. And the Valiants with the slant 6. There's two gentlemen here with their trophies. Howland always gave away some really sharp-looking trophies through all their years. As we started out with this, I made reference that Howland Dragstrip was established by a gentleman by the name of Ben Christ, and he went on to US 30 Dragstrip in Chicago and then branched out to more strips across the country. He operated Howland for 2 years and then he lost his lease. Then different fellows would come in and promote Howland for a year or two, but it never seemed to pick up after that, and more disputes occurred between the farmer who owned the property and the promoters that were leasing it. And by 1962, that's what finally closed up Howland for good. Although by 1962, drag strips such as Thompson, Ohio, Dragway 42, Quaker City to the south of Howland, about 30 miles, were all in operation, and they were much wider strips, better facilities, and they were just drawing the cars and the people away. More of your big stalkers then. Now we'll be seeing some more views of this dragster. This was a Chrysler Hemi-powered dragster driven by Larry Witt. He was in partners with another gentleman by the name of McClendon, so it was referred to as the Witt-McClendon dragster. They were out of Ravenna, Ohio. Big Fords. Black Chevy here. We'll catch quite a few different scenes with it in. The fellow that owned that was a good friend of ours. It was one of your 348s with the 3.2s, 335 horse 4-speed. It was a Biscayne model. Tackett now displaying some signs on his car. For 1960, to go to the Detroit Nationals, Howland Dragstrip sponsored him. Car weighed 4,200 pounds. One of the reasons we see his car so often is he won almost every Sunday there. Howland also had another procedure in the gasser classes. If you won your class one week, you had to move up to the next class, and you would keep progressing up until you were beaten. So you'll see Wilbur's car running here sometimes with the Continental kit on, and then another time you may see it removed. That means he's unbolted possibly several hundred pounds and moved up a class, because the gasser classes were based on weight to cubic inches at that time. I think Howland represents what grassroots drag racing was about back then. You just went there and had a good time. If you would win, you'd get a trophy. If not, you went home and fine-tuned your car and brought it out the next week and tried to win. Being paid money for winning your class was unheard of at that time. It was just all for a trophy. A couple rails sneaking down on us. The blue Roadster was the gold one that we had seen previous. As evidenced in this video, if it had 4 wheels on it, you could drag race it. Watch this little scene in front of you. The old coupe must be broke down, and he's going to give it a push with his 55. The little jet we keep seeing was Wilbur Tackett's brother. Little Fiat Alter going by us. don't have too many big name stars in our video, but what we do have is just some good old-fashioned drag racing. Porsche, and a little Triumph by the looks of it, beating them. A couple more Corvettes. Staging area. They've improved upon their trophy stand somewhat. So if your car was protested, it was taken into the barn and torn down at that point. Home-built dragster heading down. This is George Eisenhart again. Even dragged pickup trucks back then, so NHRA today doesn't have anything over on Howland. Even ran trucks back in those days. Here this little blue truck has a straight 6 in it, 3-speed, and he's got his tailgate down for less wind drag. There's another Hemi-powered dragster with the blower mounted in the front. This was another local car. The light purple colored Austin Healey on the far side was Chevy powered, and the Thunderbird in the near lane is Chrysler Hemi powered. Little jump start again. I believe the procedure was you were allowed 3 jump starts before you were disqualified. 40 Ford here was Olds powered. Another jump start. Mostly gassers at that time period, your 55, 56 Chevys. Occasional Ford thrown in. To about 1960 yet, and you can see most of our coupes have disappeared now. This was our little purple coupe we had been talking about. It's been sold, and this fella here is running it. It was referred to as Deemer Screamer. Powered Austin Healey. Of course, everybody remembers Bon-Ami for your window numbers. Armored coupe was out of the Cleveland area. Generally ran in B gas. A couple more of your earlier gassers. Throwing his shifts in there, the front of the end of the car is coming up. There's our friend with his black 60 Chevy again. Four-door Hudson. This is Don Garlett's. The exhibition runs out there. Then push down the strip. Wilbur moving up along the return road. Truck 32 Ford in the far lane. Just a little closer up view of it. Here's Whit McLendon again. At this point they're running carburation. That was a chassis research frame. It's that blown Olds. Check out the slicks. This gives you a great view of the strip. This Chevy right here ran C-gas. It was out of the Youngstown area. Could use pause traction. Roadsters. Tommy Ivo showed up with his twin Buick powered rail, but on this particular day it rained and he never got to make any runs. This is 1960. 57 Chevy is running a supercharger. Two blown Chevys, the same one we had seen previous. Must have a lot of clearance on his rings for the amount of oil smoke. That fellow from Cleveland again in his primered coupe. Got a little altered again. There's another home-built dragster out of the Youngstown area. Oldsmobile powered with 8 2s on it, I believe. Notice he's just in his shirt sleeves. All these runs we've been witnessing where there's 2 cars going down, these are actual eliminations. These aren't time trials. The number of cars per class would vary. There could be as little as 1 and as many as a dozen or more, depending on what type of cars they were, and you would make round after round till you were the class winner. Your number was wiped at the far end if you lost, and you returned to the pits. There's a shot of our friend's 348 Chevy. He's installed chrome valve covers. Here's Whit McLendon again, and at this point they're running the 671. There's a K88 chassis research frame. Notice how far above the roll cage his head is. A little roadster pickup sporting a 348 with 3 2s. This white 58 Corvette in the near lane, I know very well. This is my brother's 58 Corvette with a 283 horsepower, fuel injected 4-speed. And there he is getting his trophy. I'm not going to say who that fellow standing there is, but there's the car with the trophy. friend with the black 60 Chevy. He could never win, but if Wilbur Tackett would slide behind the wheel, and this is Wilbur here, he could win his class for him. And there's the car owner.